There's something about 7 goals, Rog, that feels so much worse than a 6-0 loss. Even a 7-1 loss is so much worse than a 6. When you get to 7, it's just a big number that feels like you just don't see it very often in football. And it feels awful. I mean, amazing to see your team score 7, humiliating beyond to see your team concede 7, especially when your team have been so good. From the Men in Blazers studios in the crap part of Soho and the crap part of Bedford, New York, it's the Men in Blazers podcast, Rog.
We back like the Arsenal. And how are you holding up, Dave? How was England? Were you reveling in Rishi Sunak's Disneyland?
Oh, you couldn't even say back like Liverpool, Rog. Yeah, I am back from the UK, from the mother country, or certainly for one of us, although Val's still there. Yeah, I loved it. Rishi Sunak had a good week as PM. That was probably the only time you could ever say that.
The highlight for you, I do believe, the trip to Nando's.
We never made it to Nando's. My son, as we're leaving to go...
Your son had one request and you couldn't even make that happen.
As we're leaving to go to the UK, my son looked at me sort of wistfully, like so emotional. First time we've gone since COVID. First time since my father passed. First time to go and see family. His first time going to Stamford Bridge. And he looked at me with a little tear rolling down his cheek and he said, I can't wait to try Nando's. That's what he really wanted. But we tried a lot of other things. Had an amazing time.
Did you make a good faith concerted attempt to get the lad his peri peri sauce?
No, we walked past. We were walking through. I think just across Regent Street at one point. And he says, "Oh, Dad, there's a Nando's." I went, "Oh," and then kept on walking. That was as close as we got. I'm not taking him to Nando's. There's no point. The whole of my family are like, he wanted to go to Nando's, like. So no, but we did, believe me, he had the birthday of his life.
God, there's 2 theories on what you did. Partially, let me paint this in joyous colours, as opposed to the way you just painted it, which is like, yeah, look over there, son, we're not going. Anyway, I do believe your philosophy was, if the lad has Nando's when he's like 12 years of age, what more is there for him in life? You can't spoil the kid too early. He's got to keep aspiring.
It's not that. It's like...
if he has his dream and realises it's shite, it's going to be devastating. It's better he holds on to the Nando's dream.
No, it's much more prescriptive than that. It's that he has a lifetime to make bad decisions, that when you go to London, you've got all of the wonderful food, all of the experiences, all of the culture that you can lap up in that city and family and all these things. You've got a lifetime to make horrible decisions that he can make all by himself when he wants. But when he's with his dad, being shown London, being shown his hometown, like, we're going to go to eat at better places.
God, that is so complicated and remarkable. I'm taking Oz, my youngest son, in a couple of weeks' time. We're going to go and watch England play Ukraine. Big date for all Mikolenko obsessives. And I've got to say, he does believe at this point that I think not just the whole of England, I think he thinks Great Britain, not just the whole of the United Kingdom, is just one enormous flame grilled peri peri piece of Nando's. And we're going in.
Yeah. Well, you like that kind of food more than I do. I mean, when you go around America, yeah. Well, what would we call it? A chicken shop. The low culture of food for you is high culture in many ways. And I don't disagree with that. Believe me, I love some Singaporean street food. But Nando's is a step too far for me.
I love a grade pending. When you see a grade pending, and listeners outside of New York, that's what is it? It's the food, the hygiene on a restaurant. Grade pending means what, would you say? How would you describe that to a non-New Yorker?
It would be, you don't really want to go in there because it's going to be a really bad grade that they get from the health and safety people, but they're just waiting to put it on.
It means you don't just get the food, you get some rat droppings as a free bonus in there too.
Pretty much.
When I see a grade pending, I'm like, what magic and mystery lies behind that door? We're going in.
Absolutely.
A lot of football to get through, Dave. And by the way, yes, to all of you listening, shout into your pod radios. I do know Everton are football's equivalent of grade pending, but let's get down to it, David.
with less rat droppings, I assume. Before we get to the football, we've got to talk about the massive week of weeks here at Men in Blazers World Headquarters. We got quite an incredible JJ Watt pod dropping later in the week.
It's amazing. It really is amazing, by the way.
Can't wait
for
it.
That guy is a football obsessive at this point. Oh, football.
There are rumours Pep Guardiola is going to hang out with you on Wednesday, Roger. Some very significant rumours. And
talk.
Marcus Rashford, apparently, at the end of the week. But as big for us as any of that, a little bit about a new addition to the Men in Blazers pod family. Rog, this Thursday, we launch Vamos! A brand new audio offering that focuses on all things CONCACAF with none other than host, former US men's national team hero, longtime friend of the show, Herc Gomez.
Oh, God. First of all, Hercules Gomez, no secret to anyone who listens to Men in Blazers. He's always been my guest of choice when it comes to matters CONCACAF. It's been that way since he was a player. When I covered the team, he was always first with an insight or a quote. Really, not just an insight or a quote, but an analysis of what you just watched that made you think differently about the spectacle. And upon turning to broadcasting, I think he's been that times 100. Independent-minded, well-informed, analytical. In key moments, I always seek out Herc's voice. And so, as we decided to build out Men in Blazers' talent roster, which is really the goal over the next 48 months, Hercules was one of the first people I reached out to. I really wanted a voice that could guide us through the dominant storylines crackling around our region. Dizzying days for all who love the game we love in the United States. A Copa America coming, a World Cup hurtling towards these shores. Liga MX firmly established as the most watched league in the United States. MLS embarking on its Apple era. The sound of those tectonic plates shifting beneath the corner of our football world is faintly audible everywhere. Vamos, it's really our attempt to craft an accessible, intelligent, weekly source for everything you need to know about the biggest football stories on our continent. I'm so elated to launch this project. Our goal really with Men in Blazers in 2023-24 is just to do good things with great people, and Herc's all of that and more. So God bless. Vamos.
Oh, Rog, couldn't be more excited to be launching this pod with Herc. Very excited about all the Tobagan coverage that we're going to have.
Going deep.
The premiere episode drops this Thursday right here on this pod feed. Again, this week's episode is on this feed. Make sure that you're subscribed. Make sure to listen, share, review, and rate. Rog, let's celebrate this beautiful moment in Men in Blazers history with a toast.
God, I want to raise this first bud of the day, which is actually technically a Bud Light, to Kylian Mbappe, who this weekend etched his name into the history books again. Became Paris Saint-Germain's all-time leading goal scorer. His 201st goal in the 4-2 Ligue 1 victory over Nantes. He's just 24 years of age. He's done all of this. Yes, 201 goals in just 247 appearances. Dizzying numbers. And perhaps the most dizzying of all to me is that age. He's so bloody young still. 24, 2 months younger than Christian Pulisic, 2 generations younger than Tim Ream. You know who else became their club's top scorer at that time, at that age? Lionel Messi at Barcelona. That is the kind of transcendent trajectory that Kylian is on, and I think we're all the better for it. Courage, or as they say in Paris, courage.
Oh, and he did it. He did it at Nantes. It's hard to do it at Nantes, Rob. Okay.
Tell me about it.
To the football.
I've tried.
Liverpool 7, Manchester United 0. That is right. That is not a typo, Roger. This is how the weekend ended in the UK. Liverpool 7, Manchester United 0. An historic victory for Liverpool that could turbocharge their top 4 hopes. A hat-trick of braces from Cody Gakpo, Darwin Nunez and Mohamed Salah, plus a cherry on top from Bobby Firmino. See Jurgen Klopp and co. just bludgeon a United team that just 1 week earlier had lifted the first trophy of the Eric Ten Hag era. A number of records broken in this game, including Mo Salah becoming Liverpool's all-time leading Premier League goal scorer with 129. Just an absolutely incredible achievement, Rog. There's just so much to break down.
Behold, the most epic rivalry of all time. Liverpool hadn't lost at home in this massive game for 7 long years. But this, we were told, was the game in which the balance of power was creaking back towards the Manchester side of things. Eric Ten Hag's surging United, confident, potent, the green shoots of grandeur everywhere, and their cup of Carabao marching behind their host like an energy drink. Ark of the Covenant. Klopp adrenaline pumping on a weekend in which fourth-place rivals Spurs and Newcastle had both lost before kick-off. And he was asked in that pre-game interview, "What's your key to the game here, Jurgen?" And he thought for a moment and he just said, "Play good is helpful." And God bless. In came Hendo. 400th start for that stalwart. Many Liverpool fans howling. What? Why? How? But stats had shown previous 5 times that Fabinho, Harvey Elliott and Hendo had all started together. In the previous 4, they'd won them all, conceded just twice. So there was a rational wisdom for Jurgen amongst the old legs and the howling emotionalism of the fans. United, they went with the fatigued legs but dominant minds of their Carabao starting 11. And we do need to acknowledge this detail, Davo. Liverpool, in the midst of a season, yes, of bewilderment, of melancholy, of fatigue, of supposed vulnerability. I mean, I am old enough to remember their sordid performance against Crystal Palace last weekend. Some fans flew a plane over the field before the game saying, "FSG out, Klopp in, enough is enough." And that flew around Anfield. And look, I know Liverpool fans, as many who are annoyed about the lack of competition in terms of the investment with the bigger clubs in that squad and the theory that Klopp's brilliance has kind of papered over the cracks. But a league title, 3 Champions League finals in the last 5 years. Dave, the impatience of football fans, some would say the entitlement of football fans, sometimes I just don't know. Truth is, really, aren't Everton fans the only one who can look at Liverpool and say, God, enough is enough of all that winning?
I mean, yeah, it's not like that's a team that are out on the field that are, they weren't bought at Walmart, Rog. Nothing against Walmart, but there are superstars on that team from front to back. So I think the level of investment from FSG, it's hard to argue with. But yeah, fans don't like it when their teams start playing badly. And Liverpool have not played very well this season, and they've fallen a long way off the pace. And it's interesting, Roger, because one thing you forget about London is what the late kickoff on Sunday really is in the UK, is that here it's just the second game when you wake up on a Sunday. In the UK, the entire weekend builds up to this 4:30 p.m. kickoff on a Sunday afternoon. And so the amount of narrative, the amount of expectation, the amount of drama, it's tangible.
The amount of beers before the game.
Well, that's what I was going to get to. And it is just, it was a cauldron. Anfield before kickoff was just a cauldron.
And Klopp had asked his team to be brave from the off, and they were. They were front foot. They won every second ball. They charged at the United goal, albeit without actually forcing De Gea into action. Nunez came closest, Martinez smothering brilliantly. United, you thought their games so thick and fast, that Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday, Thursday, just the 2 games a week pace, fatigued, but then they shook it off, sprang into action. Anthony forcing Alisson to parry low, really a warning shot that United, even off their game, could charge forward and smite because they have quality. But it was Liverpool, 43rd minute, who got the breakthrough. Some ball from Robbo. Soon as that pass was slipped in, Gakpo, whom United had coveted but couldn't afford, he knew exactly what he was going to do. Cut inside Varane, threw him off, opened up his body to arc an arrow into the corner of the net. Delicious, incredible ball. Fine finish. I had absolutely no interest in being somebody else's muse. Roared Gakpo, I am not a muse, I am the somebody. And it was magnificent.
Yeah, arced, hit low, and also with great speed. 3 things very hard to do in combination. It wasn't Arour, Rog. It was a fantastic goal.
And he reeled away in joy, Cody. Got a rap on the head from Jordan Hendo for his efforts, and unfurled some slightly weird Darwin Nunez. Sniffed my armpit goal, Selly. God, Darwin, that man is, I swear, Uruguayan Mary Catherine Gallagher, which would explain a lot. And at half-time, all the narrative was, ho, 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 hold on, Ten Hag is the master of half-time adjustments. What will he do to conjure more from his talent-soaked momentum monsters? Klopp had called Manchester United a results machine pre-game, and we expected, didn't we, United to come out, rip up the game script, but instead, this was gobsmacking. It was Liverpool urged on by that raucous cop, United truly sucker punched Liverpool almost from kickoff. In transition, Elliott slapped in across to Nunez from close enough range that even he couldn't conjure a surreal miss. Bro lettuce to man bun. Liverpool roaring, what is dead may never die. David, never. I've always said this. I've learned this the hard way, listeners, too many times. I can show you my scars. They're real and mental. Never write Liverpool off. I've learned that lesson the hard way. I'm starting to believe, David, this is my theory, Liverpool soak up all the global schadenfreude in the world and somehow convert it into rocket fuel.
Yeah, I mean, this is rocket fuel. Who knows? We'll have to find out in future weeks whether this is rocket fuel that had a 1 week expiration date, you know, or whether it's rocket fuel.
I love that. It's my favourite kind of Liverpool rocket fuel.
Yeah, but whether it's rocket fuel that's going to last a long time. But, you know, this is the cruel thing about football, Rog. We've seen teams play terribly and lose 1-0. I saw a team play terribly at the weekend and they won 1-0. But sometimes in football, you can just get hammered when you are just a step below the pace and when the other team are feeling it all over the park. It's a game of such close margins. It's not the NBA where you can get hammered, but you score 112 points and your opponent score 138. That's a hammering, but at least it looks better. This was just...
I think it's sometimes a game of margins. If you watch Everton week in, week out, you cannot get away with that explanation. Sometimes there's wide margins. Yeah. But you are right, and old listeners will know this. My dad, Judge Ivor Bennett, always said, David, what are the two best times to score a goal?
Just before and just after halftime.
Yeah, just before halftime. Why? Because my dad thinks that the manager will have to rip up his halftime team talk.
Poor Eric Ten Hag.
And not be able to not able to improv a great one, according to my dad. And right after is also demoralising. Second best time to score a goal, because then the players will be demoralised. And that manager's halftime team sheet's instantly out of date. And Liverpool had scored either side of Judge Ivor Bennett time, the rare double, and it would get worse for Manchester United. Liverpool kept overloading United's right, and within 3.5 minutes, some third goal. Really a work of art, as if Liverpool had taken United, almost with Aikido, they'd taken United's confidence and used it against them. Mohamed Salah tormenting Lisandro Martinez, fed Cody Gakpo, and the Dutchman, again, so clinical, again, seemed to know exactly what he was going to do before the ball had even come to him. He caressed it, Davo. He sweetly, archly caressed it over a gobsmacked David De Gea. It was magnificent.
Yeah, and watching Man United's defence, who, you know, we have given all of them a lot of credit this year, Martinez particularly, and watching them just being taken apart by Liverpool, it was quite staggering.
Luke Shaw walking around with some big, we're all trying to find the guy who did this vibes after letting Gakpo run right off his shoulder in on goal. Gakpo maligned, but suddenly the best Dutchie since musical youth, Darwin, and Gakpo suddenly belatedly, joyously bedding in after deeply inconsistent starts. Salah blasted a fourth. The joy of something lost felt like it was being found again. Mo Salah, 10 goals in 6 games against the Manx. I bet you he wishes he could play Manchester United every week. United had just imploded at this point. They'd stopped trying. They gave up. They capitulated. Bruno Fernandes. You know, United have talked this season about their much touted no dickheads policy, but Bruno seemed to spend much of the second half. Dave, I don't know. On my television, Bruno seemed to have almost an enormous phallus welded onto his cranium. Was it like that on your television?
Yeah, he seems to pass the dickhead test quite handsomely.
Yeah, I think I think the word "no" has fallen off the sign by his locker. Oh, dickhead! Dickhead! Yeah, where do I sign?
Yeah, no, that's kind of incredible. I'm sure that what that applies to is how players train, how they are around the other teammates, how they do those things. But certainly, when it comes to on-screen performances, on-field performances, this was next level. Enormous.
I remember watching the Beastie Boys and the pinnacle in their peak, their first album, Licensed to Will. I wrote about this in my book, Reborn to the USA. On stage, at the peak of their concert, they had an enormous, like a 50-foot penis that would spring out like a jack-in-the-box. And genuinely, if United had chosen to play that, it would not have been as large a dick as Bruno was for much of this game. Just his arch heel theatrics, flinging himself to the floor in really physics-defying fashion, just trolling around, not even trying to get near the ball. And that was United's vibe. That was from their captain, as Darwin Núñez added a fifth. Mo Salah rifled home after more woeful United defending. That was his 129th goal for Liverpool, the most in club history, and he reeled away and ripped off his jersey. Incredible stat from Squawka. At Anfield since 2017, I love this. Davo, Mo Salah has received more yellow cards for taking his shirt off for celebrating scoring against Manchester United twice than United have scored goals total once. Nipples.
Yeah, that's amazing. He looks like he's been back in the gym working hard. He's looking good, Mo Salah.
He said post-game, it's very special. I can't lie. It was always in my head since I came here. I'm going to go home with my family and have some chamomile tea and celebrate. Oh, Mo Salah sipping tea like Alex Morgan. Respect. And then in a moment of true human poetry, on the day in which Liverpool's new front three seemed to click in the most savage and potent, dream-filled, roaring fashion, Bobby Firmino, that smiling assassin crown prince, trotted out days after he'd announced he was going to let his contract run out at the end of the year. He'll leave Liverpool after 8 incredible seasons. He scored a goal. It was less a goal, Dave. It was like a curtain call. It's like a hat tip to those who were replacing him. It was like a memory of all the joy that had been shared between crowd and player and relief. Really, a true Warriors final moment, right?
Yeah, it was a tribute goal. It was a tribute goal. And it was actually a very heartwarming moment, and his celebration and his genuine joy and the joy his teammates felt for him.
It was beautiful. It was like the climax. You realise you were watching live, the climax of an epic poem that will be sung for generations about Bobby and Mo and Sadio and the joy and the miles we'd travelled and the cities we'd seen and the victories we'd savoured. My great friend John Green tweeted, Bobby is still in his prime. He will always be in his prime. When the heat death of the universe occurs in trillions of years, Roberto Firmino will nutmeg the last dying star. I adore that. He'll probably actually no-look nutmeg the last dying star, John Green, who's taken it particularly badly. But 7-0, Davo. Honestly, was that not like watching the world's most constipated human being react to the invention of prunes?
Yeah, I mean, it is something watching. There's something about 7 goals, Rog, that feels so much worse than a 6-0 loss. Even a 7-1 loss is so much worse than a 6. I don't know what it is about the number of 7.
Good goal. Yeah.
But it's like 5 and 6 is awful, much worse than 4 and 3, but still within the realm of reasonableness. When you get to 7, it's just a big number that feels like you just don't see it very often in football. And it feels awful. I mean, amazing to see your team score 7, humiliating beyond to see your team concede 7, especially when your team have been so good and are bringing you so much joy to get punched and just smashed. You can feel the blood in your mouth from that punch in the gob of a 7-0 loss to Liverpool. Oh my word, for Man United fans. But yeah, there's something about the number 7 that isn't good.
Yeah, it's the worst Premier League loss ever for United. First time they conceded 7, made them long for those nostalgic days of last season where Liverpool merely pistol whipped them 5-0 and 4-0. That league title chase, really a crevice of a dream this season, is now over. And how they respond against Betis on Thursday and then Southampton at the weekend. A week ago, their fans danced at Wembley. Today, a reality check. Ten Hag seething post-game, lambasted his players, his senior leaders, he called unprofessional. They didn't cooperate together anymore. They didn't fulfill their jobs. This seemed, let's say, until we see it extending into a real dip, just a case of the 51 million games they played this season, finally catching up with them. But Liverpool, a game that started with a plain, enough is enough, ended with United's backline screaming something similar. Enough is enough. No mass, no mass. And GFOP at Steve Schuler, I think, gave the most logical analysis of what we witnessed, because I'd love you to explain what happened to Liverpool, Davo. He said the Reds went back to the 2022 settings in this software patch.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't really know how to explain it. I messaged, upon landing last night at Newark, I messaged, a few of my mates who are huge Man United fans and asked them to try and, give their explanation of what happened. And of course, the first, 70 to 80% of the textual content was all about tiredness and tired legs, and they've played more than any team in Europe and all of those kind of things. But when you sort of got further into the analysis, a lot of it was about, has been a feeling amongst even United fans that they do. I mean, similar Klopp's little jibe there, which is being they're a results machine. There has been a feeling about a lot of United fans that this is unbelievable. We are getting away with wins when the overall performance hasn't been great, but there have been some amazing goal-scoring moments from Marcus Rashford, key moments in games where we've gone up after we haven't conceded. And they always wondered what would happen if they faced a challenge early on in the game. And, early on, as you said, in Judge Ivor time, just before halftime, just after halftime, this is a club that is eerie. It didn't answer to that challenge at that point. And this is going to be the next mountain for Eric Ten Hag to climb, is to teach that new version of leadership around his players, of how you deal when it's not going well.
It's fascinating. Pep, ultimately, he seems so salty after the Carabao win for United. He was the one who called that they were due for a reckoning. This came out of nowhere. Peter Drury called it Liverpool as you remember them, which I love. The harmony between that front three suddenly, the movement, the understanding, that just clicking together on this day. On this day, it is too soon to herald that Liverpool are back, just to be clear. But at the same time, Liverpool have always finished in the Champions League places during Klopp's full seasons at Anfield, and they're now within 3 points of Tottenham, a game in hand, soaring. They play Bournemouth next weekend. Will no doubt crap the bed against them, according to my brother Nigel, always the optimist. But for now, the memory of this game, the spectacle, the surging emotions, they'll be as lauded in Liverpool fans' minds as the Trojan War or the Aeneid's War in Italy were to the ancients. And Davo, sometimes I do think, and I tweeted something to this effect after the game, sometimes I think football only exists to make fools of us all and remind us how little we know about anything. I mean, who foresaw this? Who predicted this? This game was truly, profoundly humbling. Humbling as a football fan, humbling as a human. I'd say the humbling went far beyond just Manchester United and their fans. And that's the beauty of the game.
Yeah, I mean, when the Premier League writers came up with this storyline, I mean, can you imagine the up in the executive suite where they review
Have we
the
jumped
scripts,
the shark? Have we
they're
jumped
like,
the shark with
no,
this?
you can't have Liverpool beat Man United 7-0.
No one will believe that, man.
They just won the Carabao Cup. I mean,
Are you crazy, man?
Are you crazy?
Are you crazy?
But yeah, it's just a storyline that you wouldn't believe in. It is these margins, and just that, to me, these, what was it? What was it that made the difference? What was the asymmetric advantage that Liverpool had in this game? And I think that Anfield crowd, as you said last season, those results 5-0 and 4-0, Liverpool do get it up against Man United. They want to get up for that game. And they maybe sensed a little bit of weakness of Man United coming in, a sense that, they could stick it to them. That atmosphere at Liverpool, at Anfield, was just phenomenal. It was electric. And
we've seen it. We've seen it ourselves. We saw Manchester City with our own eyes go in and be smited. I have seen Everton go in. It's like quicksand. When that crowd gets behind that team and that team feel it, it is like quicksand and it's impossible to battle against. But whether they can do it again next week against Bournemouth, we will see.
Yeah, and we mentioned all the goal scorers, but Hendo, but we should also a shout out for Harvey Elliott. What a performance from the young, I guess, future England midfielder. He was superb in that game. He was everywhere. Okay, Rog. Now two insane games this weekend.
Insane.
This is one of the best games of Premier League football I've ever seen. The comeback, just phenomenal. Arsenal 3, Bournemouth 2. We should have known from the start, because with the rarely seen kickoff set piece, the visiting Cherries marched right down the field and they took a 1-0 lead on the league leaders in just 11 seconds, thanks to Philip Billings' foot. Despite Arsenal having most of the possession, the Cherries then doubled that lead on 57 minutes via Marco Senesi. But trailing 2-0, and with their title hopes perpetually in the balance, Arsenal did what Arsenal do. They roared back a 62nd minute goal from just returned from injury, Thomas Partey. And Ben White's first ever goal for the club pulled them level after a check of the watch. And then in the 97th minute, Rog, a moment future civilizations will learn about via cave drawings in North London, tapestries and TikTok. The ball broke to Reece Nelson on the edge of the area. He dropped the Elephant and Castle hammer, thanks for the South London reference, lashing a shot into the corner and winning it for the Arsenal. What a game of bloody football.
Let's go back before kickoff. This was the Arsenal closing in on a first Premier League title since 2004, facing up to one of their favourite praise of all time. Arsenal have beaten Bournemouth in every competition by an aggregate score of 17-2 at home. I think only against Gainsborough Trinity, whom they've beaten 8 times out of 8. And where are Gainsborough Trinity now? Do they have a better record at home? So it was some bloody sucker punch from kickoff that Bournemouth scored after, I think it was 9.11 seconds. A set play from kickoff. They drew up what looked like, to me, some kind of mid-major college football conference onside kicky thing. You could have told me I was watching the Tarleton State Texans and I would have believed you. And I do wonder if it was a play drawn up actually by Cherry's new owner, Michael B. Jordan himself, and sent it to them. The Bournemouth players essentially lined up like an onside kick, straight across the halfway line. 5 Arsenal defenders, bemused, confused, totally static as the Cherries played right through them. Billing stabbed home from close range as the commentator was still reading his set piece about how Bournemouth have never won a single point at Arsenal. They just went down the field and scored on them. 9.11 seconds. They were second fastest goal in the Premier League all time. Do they not know about the scientific truth of scoring too early?
Do they not know that commentators, Rog, they've got to prepare their opening remarks, and they usually take more than 10 seconds after kickoff? Yeah, I mean, can you score too early?
You're the expert.
Against the league leaders when you are mired in a relegation battle for the ages? I would say that you can't really score too early, and this helped Bournemouth get, what was ultimately a pretty good result, a pretty good performance against the champions. So I don't believe it was too early.
It would get worse for Arsenal. Trossard off injured on 22 minutes. Enter Emile Smith-Rowe. Good to see him back, but it didn't help. Gobsmack of gobsmacks. Marco Senesi lost Thomas Partey, headed home. And that is where things got interesting, because Partey quickly made up for his mistake by stabbing in from close range, and then the tenor of the game just changed completely. Reece Nelson, impact sub, 69th minute he came on. Nice. Came on for the first time since November, and Arsenal proceeded to score twice within 2 minutes. First, tin up Ben White for his first goal in an Arsenal jersey, a strike that crossed the line before Neto could parry. And was seen to be a ball's length over the line, that distance. Always when you see that photograph, the VAR photograph of how much it's like the difference between glory and doom, titles and titles lost, a lifeline. Just the Emirates started rocking, Bournemouth quaking, Saka banking shots off defenders onto the post. But man, I've got to be clear, I am not an Arsenal fan. And I don't know if you know that about me, but watching this game, Davo, the finale, my nipples were tingling. I have honestly rarely felt more alive than watching the last 15 minutes of this game.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm even less an Arsenal fan than you are. But watching this on Match of the Day, watching that comeback, it was just so thrilling. Watching all the Arsenal reaction videos, listening to my mates on Twitter and text that evening, just literally red-faced and so emotional about what happened. The only thing I've got to say, though, is this is 26/38 into the season. This is 13/19. This is happening at what is just the end of the second act. We've got an entire third act of the Premier League season to come, and I can't believe the amount of drama we're having this early.
Yeah, at Woohoo Sakal called Arsenal He said, Men in Blazers, Arsenal are the cardiac kids. And yes, they were. Bournemouth desperately hanging on, shot blocking with their hands like Dikembe Mutombo, nothing given. Arsenal had all the ball. Bournemouth hemmed in, but resilient. Arsenal could not find a crevice of space. There was no magic. Shots went wide. Crosses hit the first man into extra time. 6 minutes deep into it because of, conspiracy theorists like to say, because they were just letting it go till Arsenal scored. They're actually an injury right at the top of extra time. 97th minute, corner, Reece Nelson, best Nelson since full, found the time, found the space, honestly, when you look at just the shattered, fatigued Bournemouth defenders unable to close him down, he lined up his shot, dispatched it, chest, half volley, his aim was true, and just carnage in Arsenal households all over the world, David.
Yeah, and look, if you know anything about Reece Nelson's story, this moment is just an exclamation point, a highlight video, not only for the club, but for him personally. Amazing to see it happen for the South Londoner. What a strike, what a finish. Situationally, just how brilliant to hit the ball that well at that moment when literally you can feel every Arsenal fan in the world taking a deep, sharp intake of breath. Amazing. So happy. So happy
pray for Pep in that second. Arteta screaming like a child on the schoolyard as the player that he'd spotted in the Arsenal Academy, nurtured himself back in his playing days, delivered the hammer. A hammer that Arsenal fans will hope is the exclamation point on their dream season. The amazing thing to me was, Gabriel Jesus was the hero. Injured. He begat Eddie Nketiah. Lost his form. Begat Leandro Trossard. Begat Reece Nelson on this day. An almost biblical lineage of Arsenal goal scorers. And in that moment, all we saw everywhere was just the purest joy, the purest innocence. Footballers are heavily paid. Massively. They're cynical. They're professionals. But all of that in this moment, just the mask completely dropped. They were just reeling around, eyes full of wonder, in unison with the Arsenal faithful. At Charles Watts tweeted, the more you look at the still picture of the goal, the more you see. Gabriel collapsed over. Odegaard flat on his back on the floor. Ben White trolling Cherry's keeper Neto, celebrating in his face. Jorginho charging on. Saliba going somewhere. Nelson, honestly, is the calmest of everyone. There's Bournemouth surrender cobras absolutely everywhere. A goal deep in what's called Fergie time. Sir Alex Ferguson, United as title winners, would always find a way. Never stop believing. Never stop going. Never stop winning. Can't stop, won't stop. David, Arsenal Football Club, chasing that first title in 19 years. Just last second moment. I watched it. The collective memory that the fans, the players, forged in that moment. Can you name a movie? Name a movie that was better at the end than that. Because to be honest, my favourite movies they're all Holocaust ones. So happy ending's not really my thing.
Nearly
nearly
every Hollywood movie ever made ends like that, Rog. It was a wonderful moment. What made it so good is that it wasn't just pure happiness. It wasn't just pure joy. It was heavier than that. It was a release of pressure. It spoke to the amount of pressure that they all feel under, the amount of pressure that Arteta is putting on himself, that he's putting on his club. It was a release of something phenomenal and deep and terrifying to them to be caught. And the moment that they escaped after that early goal, they escaped after going 2-0 down, they escaped after, as you said, every block, every shot going wide, everything not quite going their way as they tried to get in the game. That's what made it so good. The only problem with it, with the Hollywood analogy, is, as I said earlier, this is only 13/19 through the season. We've got a lot more football to play, and this is emotionally draining stuff, Roger.
But Arsenal fans just loving life at the moment. Particularly, there's a joke going around that the 3 last-minute stoppage time winners that they've savoured this season all came off academy graduates. Reece Nelson, Eddie Nketiah, and the back of Emi Martinez's head. God bless you, Arsenal, by the way, from an Everton fan. What a game. The goal after 9 seconds, that's what's amazing about this epic game. That Bournemouth goal, a complete misdirection in narrative by the Premier League script writers, will be totally forgotten. All we know is Gunners, Chiefs, Brendan Fraser, comeback season is upon us all. And I want to end this game by reading a raven we got from GFOP, Paul Mellimer, who wrote after the final whistle. He said, "Football really saved me today. Massive storms in Louisville. All of Kentucky have been power cut. Hundreds of thousands suffering, including mine, for well over 24 hours now. But Reece Nelson's goal made me forget about everything. It was one of a small few things to put a smile on my face. I love what you do. Keep on fighting the good fight." I'll just say, God bless you, Paul. To you and your family, big love to all of you in Kentucky and Arsenal fans. Just make meaning, make memories. It's magnificent watching what your team are doing for you right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should say, Roger, I apologise for all the banging going on in the crap part of Soho right now. There's a lot of construction going on. It's the Walt Disney Company building their new headquarters. Okay, Rog, Manchester City 2, Newcastle 0, the global order game of the week as Abu Dhabi owned Manchester City. See off the Saudi-backed tune in what was a relatively routine win. Phil Foden started the scoring, leaving the type of streak between Newcastle defenders that is normally only reserved for his haircuts before steering one past Nick Pope. And then, in the second half, just 2 minutes after coming on as a sub, diminutive Portuguese indie rocker Bernardo Silva hit a quick catch and release to make it 2. And so Pep keeps his hot, perpetually agitated Iberian breath on the neck of his nephew, Mikel Arteta.
That great English footballing centuries-long tradition, the Gulf Derby. Two clubs who hope that they will tear at opponents with the ferocity and tactical savvy that their teams of lawyers fight charge after charge in the courtroom. Get stuck in, Lord Panic! Miguel Delaney, the independent journalist, tweeted, "Exciting game ahead. A one state-owned club has been charged with multiple alleged breaches of Premier League rules. The other has just seen their owners contradict their legally binding assurances in a US court. What a moment." And yes, we have to mention Newcastle entered with the aftertaste of Carabao Cup defeat in their mouths and the looming threat caused by a case in the United States surrounding Live Golf. Legal filings described the Newcastle chairman, Yasser Al-Ramian, as, quote, a sitting minister of the Saudi government. What, Davo? Piff was an instrument of the Saudi state after all?
I don't believe it.
Count me for one among the shocked. I mean, it seems we were assured at the time of the takeover. Those assurances maybe aren't true, Davo. How would the Premier League ever to know?
Yeah, assurance may not translate in Arabic in the same way as we understand it. But it's just tough. Yeah, it's just difficult. I mean, this is what the Premier League has created, Rog, and this is what the Premier League has allowed to happen. I just really don't know what more can we say about it. It's becoming comical, absolutely comical. And of course, all of these, findings that we're getting in this Live Golf case are fascinating reading.
Yep. God, it's all Arlo White's fault. But the Premier League teams who are not single state owned are said to be utterly livid. The matter will now be discussed at a shareholders meeting of the Premier League March 30th. Premier League and Newcastle yet to make a comment. But the league's chief executive, Richard Masters, told the BBC back in November 2021 that if his organisation found evidence there was state involvement in the running of Newcastle, quote, we can remove the consortium as owners of the club. I honestly, to be clear, cannot imagine that ever happening. But the club's brand is about to take on really a real true darkness. But to the football, City, desperate to keep Arsenal's heels at least in sight as they headed towards the horizon, needed this. Newcastle even more desperate to find their forward gear. Spurs, Liverpool, in that mud fight for fourth place, they unleashed the Gimp. Anthony Gordon made his full debut for some ginger mano-mano with KDB, and it didn't work. 15 minutes, City cruised into lead. Incredible feat from Foden, and picked up the ball at the edge of the area, charged through 1, 2, 3, 4 Newcastle defenders, clipped it home with a heavy deflection off Botman. 4 in 3 for Pep's first son. At his best, Davo, and he seems to be getting back there. Dude's like a human hand grenade.
Yeah, I mean, he is explosive. He has the muscle reflexes, the sort of like insane like muscle speed of of something from wildlife, Rog. It's why fleas can jump so far, and it's why leopards can spring so easily. And sometimes Foden is not human in terms of his explosiveness.
Yeah, but that goal came after a tough spout in the season. Foden this week has talked about how this season has been one of his lowest in the game. And Pep addressed it, actually, pre-game. He said he's spoken to Phil, that he's gone down a level. When that happens, you have to accept it. Can't blame others, the opponent or the manager or the club. Accept you can do better. Step by step, you will be back. Which is really tough love from father to son, and tough love for Newcastle. They can't score at the moment. They're averaging something like 1 goal every 4 hours in the Premier League since the World Cup. Pickings were slim. There was a peculiar joy of seeing Anthony Gordon steaming on goal, pull back his foot and just whiff entirely. Prove you can take the boy out of Everton, Davo. There was also a violent foul from it's always, to me, when I see Mickey Almiron not smiling, it's always shocking. But watching him take out Jack Grealish 6 months after Grealish had drunkenly screamed at Mahrez that he plays like Almiron. I've got to say, I was totally there for some Almiron Grealish revenge tour violence. But Newcastle, they get so much possession. They're almost comical in their attempts to muster a shot on target, David.
Yeah, they're not the only one. There are certain clubs, we're going to get to a couple of them who are exactly the same, Rog, but perhaps teams that we follow. But Newcastle certainly now they're seen as more of a target where teams go in against them. They're not getting so many surprise goals. They're having to earn more, and it's tough. And against Manchester City, they make it very, very difficult for you to really open them up. And this game was not really as close as the final score suggested.
Yeah, City honestly held Newcastle at arm's length like an older brother, just getting a little brother, just getting that on the old head and letting them windmill away with the punches, just grasping in air, knowing they couldn't be hurt. Pep flung on Bernardo for KDB within 2 minutes, 8 seconds. He delivered the dagger. City just preying on a Newcastle defensive lapse, driving forward, flinging that ball along the edge of the box like a burger patty, going down that Five Guys prep line. Grealish to Haaland, big man, soft hands, fed Bernardo, stabbed it home. And then we just had lots of really Haaland shithousing. So many forms of Haaland shithousing down the stretch. The fight with Dan Burn, Davo. My initial reaction was, is Haaland the one to have to look up? I've never seen it before. Normally, he just ambles into a scrap with certainty he's going to have the high ground. But what did you make of this tussle, which, if it had been allowed to go on, I do believe scientifically may have caused the world to just spontaneously combust?
Yeah, it would have been like a superhero fight. It would have been like Iron Man versus the Hulk or something.
Yeah.
It was, it's tough because I don't like fighting in football. I don't think it's a good thing. And yet, at the same time, sometimes I'd like to see these fights go on. I have no way to call it. You sort of feel ultimately like Erling Haaland just has too much Viking in him to allow Dan Burn to get near him.
God, Dan Burn, though, has taken out the likes of Begbie many times in bar fights across England. I think.
No, but he needs props. He needs a prop. If he gets him near the corner flag, he could have hurt him, but not without a prop, Rog.
I got one note on this fight. Sometimes Haaland smiles, and I could swear, and I'd love City fans who watch him with more detail than I do to tell me if this is true or not. Maybe I'll ask Pep. I swear that Haaland's top teeth are a pair of dentures that he's just ripped out of some vanquished defender's mouth on the battlefield. So sometimes it looks like Haaland's top row of teeth are just made out of badly varnished wood. They're really
they don't really fit in his mouth.
Yeah, and I think he likes it. I think he likes it. That he knows that they weren't his own, and you don't want to know how he got them. 2-0 City, who won. Who won this one? I'd say sports washing was probably the winner off the field, but City on it. Best attack, overwhelmed the league's best defence. Important 3 points for City. You wouldn't know that from Pep's demeanour post-game. Full Dark Knight mode. And Newcastle really will rue chance after chance missed. Take stock of a season that could be flailing a little bit. In the last 8 weeks, they've been eliminated from the FA Cup by League One Sheffield Wednesday. They lost the Carabao Cup final, and they've dropped 14 points for the last 21. They got Wolves, Forest away, Manchester United still to come. Away the lads.
Okay, now to the game that my son George and I were actually at this weekend. Chelsea 1, Leeds 0, a 53rd minute towering header from the excellent Wesley Fofana delivered a rare victory for Chelsea. and most significantly granted temporary clemency, one assumes, to Professor Potter, who desperately needed these points. Chelsea are in 10th place, Leeds are in 17th, out of the drop zone on goal difference alone.
How the world felt different when these two teams met back in August. Jesse Marsh oversaw that delirious 3-0 drubbing over Thomas Tuchel, in which everything felt possible. Now Chelsea are sitting 10th in the league, 8 wins all season, just 1 win in 2023. How was taking your son to his first match at Stamford Bridge, a game that I hope, despite all the bullyisms that surround it, and 90 minutes he'll never forget? What was it like?
Well, look, number one, to anybody out there listening to this who've not yet made the trip to England to watch your favourite Premier League team play, and perhaps if you have your own son, your own daughter, your own family member who would love to go there with you, do it. You know, empty out the piggy bank. It was just, you know, much more than the cost of the flight and the hotel and the tickets that were.
And the Nando's.
Well, not the Nando's, but some other meals. It was just worth it. 10-fold, 20-fold, 30-fold. It's priceless. It was really a priceless experience. He was just so moved to walk in there into the stadium. He's been to the stadium before, but never on match day. To make the walk down the Fulham Road, a drink in the bar, a little shandy, a little lager top in the pub on the way in, because you can have a shandy at 12 years old in England. And he just loved every second of it, and it was incredible. And the atmosphere, I have to say, I was surprised that Stamford Bridge was packed, and the atmosphere was incredible. Maybe because they thought that there might have been a live firing at halftime, by the Americans of Graham Potter. So there was a little bit of a sense that people were there to witness as much the end of Potter as the beginning of something. The Leeds fans, of course, were amazing. They sung their hearts out the entire game. But the atmosphere was pretty special. But yeah, what an experience taking George there.
Yeah, to the game, Chelsea dominated the possession, but it was sterile possession. Havertz slipped through by Sterling, full half the field romp, but Meslier swatted it aside with his massive, occasionally erratic French arm. João Felix wrapped the bar. Chile volley just past the post when floated in by Kai. But at around 30 minutes, it all started to be rendered impotent by Leeds. Tyler Adams in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Adams mode, flickering on the counter. Boos started to ripple out. The cameras cut to Todd Burley, who really looked like he thought he was going in disguise this week. It was like sloppy hat, massive Chelsea scarf, if you've not seen it. Kind of Philip Jennings in The Americans, when you know he's in disguise, but the showrunners need you to know that it's still Matthew Reese. In going undercover at GunnerFan06, called The Look, Billionaires, Where's Waldo? Honestly, our boy is starting to look a bit like American Boris Johnson, but as he was sitting there looking absolutely miserable, huge boos at the halftime whistle. Davo, we need to know, did you and George participate?
No, didn't participate in the boos. I mean, I was mesmerized by what I was watching, partly because I'd spent some time the night before with a coach I know within the Chelsea system who'd explained to me actually what Graham Potter's system is and what he's trying to do with the team, and explained to me watching Graham Potter get frustrated, where you can actually see him, because, I was looking at him every single second of the game. Watching him get frustrated with the team was so interesting at what are the things that drive him crazy? What are the commands that are coming from the sideline? He is a lot more active than appears when you watch on television, when they only cut away when he does something dramatic. It was just a fascinating encounter, and Chelsea were dominant, and yet at the same time looked so vulnerable every time Leeds broke forward with speed, which that is a team that can break forward with speed. But it was incredibly frustrating to watch that first half.
53rd minute though, off a corner, Wesley Fofana, big air, don't care, and relief was palpable. Poor Graham Potter, he almost emoted, and then the cameras cut to odd Todd Burley, and he did this weird thing. I don't know if you've seen it, Davo. He stood up, no smiles, just did this weird with his cheeks, this weird thing. You can find it on our Instagram. He kind of quickly blew them out twice, like It was like I've watched on a lot of nature shows, and it's like what I think an American bullfrog does it, and I was trying to understand why Todd Burley did it, that cheek thing, because I looked it up, Davo, and apparently in most frog species, frogs do it. It's the male sending out the call to mate. It's the vocal sac apparently expanding as it fills with air, send out a signal that it's ready to make sweet, sweet love. Do you think now it's the same for Todd?
Do you know, the more remarkable part of that celebration was, I understand you were obsessed with the toad-like behaviour of the mouth, but it was actually what he was doing with his hands. It was the fact that he clapped and then immediately he moved straight from a clap into the fist, hitting the hand.
Rock, paper, scissors stuff.
Yeah, it was just so odd.
I think he was trying to decide if he was going to fire Graham Potter or not. He did rock, paper, scissors with himself. God, I would love genuinely any nature experts who are listening to this show to just explain what that was. I think the hands thing, any broadcaster knows, I don't know what to do with my hands. But the Chelsea fans sang, we've scored a goal, we've scored a goal, we've scored, just gallows humour all over the bridge. Leeds, it's got to be said, had their chances. Chelsea nervy down the stretch. Ruta whiff from point blank range. Chelsea, though, hung on. Picked up their second win in 12 games. With you there, Davo. That's when they win all comps. I think their first in 7 games since they beat Crystal Palace 1-0 back in January. Mighty Chelsea, cement their hold on 10th place. Close that gap tonight to just 1 point, albeit with 2 more games played. But asked what he thought at the final whistle as he trundled across the field past the cameras. Todd Burley grimaced, spat out the words, "It's a result," and walked off. Fascinating comment. It's a result, nothing more, nothing less. 1 goal from a set piece against reeling Leeds. Really a band-aid on much bigger problems that will not be healed by 1 win. Chelsea now face up to Dortmund midweek, trailing 1-0 on aggregate. All that really is left to play for in the Chelsea season lies ahead.
Okay, Wolves 1, Spurs 0. Tottenham head to the Black Country and drop what could be massive points in the context of the top 4 race, top 5 race even. After crashing a pair of shots off the bar, Spurs eventually fell to a really well-taken 82nd minute rebound from that giant bottle of baby oil in football boots, the perpetually glistening Adama Traore. Spurs still in 4th, but this was a massive opportunity missed from inconsistent Spurs.
Yeah, incredible one weekend, truly dreadful the next, and this is very much an off week. They opened as if just hell-bent on firing the ball over and over again at Jose Sarr's fingers, buzzing the Wolves goal over and over. Wolves, got to say, off came Diego Costa in what I hope is not a season-ending injury, on a stretcher. Pedro Porro, who actually looked a lot better on this day, wrapped the crossbar with a free kick. Sonny did likewise on a one-on-one. But Wolves, Neves starting to fire rangefinders down the stretch. Spurs paid no heed. And in the 82nd minute, Jimenez, fantastic cameo. CONCACAF thunder. Fraser Forster could only parry the shot. And Traore, Davo. Traore blasted the ball home. Dude, honestly, probably, I've looked at it a million times. Dude is probably trying to cross the ball, if he was being honest. It was such a... You don't think of composed finishes, and Traore, do you think he, in his mind, he said, I'm just gonna blast this wildly over the bar, and thus it was just like the most accurate moonshot of all time.
Yeah, and just missed it. I mean, there's no way he can feel the feet at the end of his legs, Rog, with the amount of work he's doing on his quads. It's remarkable that he manages to even make contact with the ball with that much muscularity.
Oh, but man, Tottenham had their chances. 21 shots, saying their most they've had in a Premier League game without scoring since 2019. 3 away defeats in a row now. Truly a blown opportunity to cement their grip on you could say, an undeserved 4th place. I think Daniel Story, the journalist, calls it 4th place almost by default this season. They now await Milan's arrival for the midweek clash in the Champions League after an FA Cup limp out against Sheffield United, which means we're almost certainly headed for another Spurs trophyless season, which aches for that fan base. And it's so odd watching them. You know, of all these teams are trying to grab that 4th place. All of them are so flawed. that the fourth place chase, David, it almost feels like a relegation scrap, where the teams are trying to beg, borrow, steal every single goal, never mind every single point down the stretch. You kind of feel that whoever it is, Liverpool, Newcastle or Spurs, that cement that fourth place, they're just going to cross the finish line and just instantly collapse.
Yeah, Spurs have to find some consistency, Rog. They are just two different teams, one week to the next. Okay, Southampton 1, Leicester 0. The rock-bottom Saints get a massive victory over the Foxes. Big sigh from Roger. Even after the Comet hell-bop level rare occurrence of a James Ward-Prowse missed penalty. But just 3 minutes later, the Saints were able to pick the lock with a lightning quick counter that saw Shea Adams play a really slick through ball to Argentina's Carlos Alcaraz, who finished neatly for what ended up being the winner. Ruben Celis' side leapfrog Bournemouth into 19th place, 1 point from safety.
A limp Leicester, so reliant on James Maddison, who they just couldn't get on the ball in dangerous enough places. They honestly could have got beaten by more. James Ward-Prowse missed the penalty. Honestly, I'm surprised when I watch it. James Ward-Prowse should have asked the ref if he could allow the Leicester defenders to make a wall in front of the penalty spot. Don't you think he would have scored it for sure then?
Yeah, you'd think so.
It's just too hard for him just to blast the ball wildly at a naked goalkeeper exposed.
He needs a wall.
It almost doesn't feel fair to him. He's that decent a guy. This doesn't feel fair. It's not a fair fight, ref. Alcaraz, though, God bless, fine finish. Still didn't know how he rolled the ball past the goalkeeper from that far away enough distance. 2 starts, 2 enormous goals for the young Argentinian, who then, this is somewhat incredible, lacerated his knee on the celebratory knee slide and had to be subbed off. I think he's having his meniscus scanned today. Injury, David. I honestly can't believe we don't see more knee slide inspired injuries.
I know. He'll blame the groundskeeper, of course. Brighton 4, West Ham 0. Not the first time David Moyes has tangled with the Seagulls and lost, but this time we're talking about the football team and not the actual birds. 3 continents of goals from Argentina's Alexis McAllister, the Netherlands' Joel Veltman, Japan's Kaoru Mitoma, and England's that guy Welbs leave West Ham in 16th place, just 1 point from the drop. Brighton, meanwhile, up to 8th place and in the mix for European football.
There was an incredible transfer rumour that kind of did the rounds midweek last week that Todd Boehly is thinking of firing Graham Potter and replacing him with De Zerbi, which is just hilarious and ridiculous and almost wonderful.
Unbelievable.
Yes, that's it. All great conspiracy theories. But De Zerbi Seagulls, my lord, they do now rain goals. They treated a flat and motivated West Ham.
It's just that Todd Boehly's saying, I was just ahead of my time. I made the right move. I hired the Brighton manager, but I was ahead of my time. I was so far ahead.
Ultimately, the move was the right one. It was I let the guy I really want just announce himself. I had to create that room in that Brighton logjam. But God, that team just treated a hapless, truly sodden West Ham the way I've only ever seen Jon Stewart reserve for interviewing Oklahoma State Senators. David Moyes' team, they must win this. Managed just 2 shots on goal, 32% possession. This wasn't just defeat. It was honestly a humiliation. Players seemed lost or shorn of care. The West Ham fans saying, you don't know what you're doing. The travelling fans sang down towards David Moyes as they watched their team's worst defeat since August 2019. A defeat that came at the worst time. Midweek European action in Cyprus against Larnaca is now followed by an enormous must-win home rumble against Aston Villa next weekend. Let us pray that Sundays are for the Moyes.
Talking of, Aston Villa 1, Crystal Palace 0. The Villains win their second on the bounce over 10-man Palace. The home side's goal came in the 27th minute with a bit of liquid football that started with goalkeeper Mark Bunn. Villa then worked the ball up the right-hand side and ended with Palace's Joachim Andersen turning the ball into his own net, but he had to play it, Rog. Things would get worse for Palace in the 62nd minute when Czech Decore was shown the door for 2 yellow cards in 5 second-half minutes. Palace, Rog, yet to win in 2023. Worrying times.
Yeah, never mind win. They can barely score a goal, Davo, that is not of the own variety, which happened in this game. Never mind score a goal. They couldn't muster touches. I think they had 5 touches inside the suddenly Unai Emery competent Aston Villa's penalty area. 0 shots on target performance for Palace. That tells its own sad aching story. Just 6 points now separate them in 12th from Southampton at the bottom of the table, and Manchester City away next weekend with Brighton and Arsenal to follow.
Yes, worrying times. In a game that will kick off right around the time this podcast is released, 9th place Brentford taking on 7th place Fulham in a London derby with massive European implications. But we got to finish, Rog, with Nottingham Forest 2, Everton 2. Rog, a roller coaster of emotion for Everton fans who twice took the lead at the City Stadium, only to give it right back to the tricky trees. On the plus side, you did score goals, plural, which is progress, and we're absolutely sure that that's how you see it, right? Progress.
Yeah, oh God. It's come to this, David. This was the Ariel Helwani Rog derby. Everton, who GFOP at Prof David Darn kindly called the last ticket on the Hindenburg, limped in. I think just 3 away wins in our last 31, travelling to Forest, who have the second best home unbeaten run. They've not lost at home since September 16th. 18 matches undented. Fortress is what it is. And we are, whatever the opposite of Visigoths, that's what Everton really are. Not even changed with Sean Dyche, who I do believe, and I'd love him to do a 23andMe. I think he's 12% Visigoth. Firm of handshake, but just 6 points from 5 games since his arrival. Again, no DCL. Why? Because he hates football. No Mope. Why? Because he can't play football. So Everton fielded 6 midfielders. Damari Gray furthest forward. We had real energy at the start. We got bodies in the box. But because one of those happened to be Dwight McNeil, who might be scientifically the single worst footballer ever to play in the Premier League. He is to football what Nate Robinson is to boxing. I cannot stand that man. But he was tripped by John Joe Shelvey in the box. This Forest squad, by the way, was Shelvey and Colback and Serge Aurier. It's like as if some gravediggers had exhumed corpses of past mediocre Premier League teams and just flung them together. It's really astonishing what they're doing. Down went McNeil. We had a penalty. Really, I was like, oh,
won
God.
You a penalty. I love it.
Yeah, no, I was like, a penalty for us to miss. That was my move. But Damari Gray just smacked home, pointed to his Everton badge as he did so. God bless. Normally that makes me feel proud, but I just felt sad for him. Yes, I ride with deep mediocrity. That was just our second away goal in 5 bloody months, Dave. A lead, lasted 10 minutes. Let me tell you what happened. My younger son, Oz, who's almost the same age as George, that same kind of wonder, that same kind of naivete, he turned to us, we're 1-0 up, and he said, "Oh, Dad, if Everton win, we'll be in mid-table." And my second son, Bear, just went berserk. He said, "Never say that! Never predict victory during a game. This is Everton. Only darkness can ensue." That was my own son said, "Only darkness can ensue." And I was sat there chastised, crestfallen. And I realised we in that moment had just ripped off all this childlike kind of optimism. That giddy childhood, you believe in your hero still. We'd ripped it off. We'd made him look at the abyss of hell. We'd forced him to glimpse into it and introduce him to the life truth. I think this is the life truth, Davo. Everton fans are only able to microdose joy.
And even worse, to make him feel somehow responsible for it.
He was so crushed. He was so yes. Yes, I don't know if you know, dear listeners, within seconds of him saying that, Forest, just the 2 true players of quality on the day, Gibbs White just hurled himself into space, slapped a shot at Pickford, which he could just parry. Brendan Johnson, incredible footballer, tapped the rebound home from an angle. And yeah, Davo, Oz was just on the couch. Have you ever had that? He felt utterly responsible for a cosmic moment beyond his control. Am I a terrible parent?
Yeah, well, no, you're not a terrible parent. You're an absolutely wonderful parent. But this is, it's hard watching your team, not be that great and watching a team in the relegation zone. What is going to make a difference, Yeah,
it's hard. Listen to this one. Everton have not scored 2 goals in a game since October. Since October, 15 games we've watched, all comps. When you think about that, you just realise how much I saw football, how much trauma I have devoted my life to and compelled my kids to watch alongside me. Just Awful, awful life choices. We have precious life in time. And I am essentially spending it watching a pile of dog shite. Big boy goal though. Free kick. Tarkowski, Keane, head tennis. Decore stepped up, nodded past Navas from close range. And I just found myself, suddenly, I don't know how I got there, on my knees in front of the television, hands in the air, pointing at the sky. And then I got just crushed by fear. Oh crap, did we just use our entire allotment of goals for the rest of the season in one game? We had only scored 6 times in the first half all season. That's incredible too. These are disgusting statistics. And this was just a feast. But genuinely, never more painful watching Everton than when you got something to lose. And I feared the second half. You think of Steve Cooper just in that locker room making complex tactical changes and adjustments. And you think Sean Dyche just having a cigarette, maybe finishing 2 pints of lager, punching Tom Davis casually in the down belows with a knuckle while lighting his own farts. And so it came to pass. At one, Benjamin Landry tweeted, "No one relegation edges like Everton." I love that, relegation edging. Second half, feisty stuff, really championship caliber football. Again, Brennan Johnson, the difference, his quality, collected the ball, exchanged passes with Yates and just smashed it home into the corner. Everton, God bless, we've lost 15 points from, these are all terrible statistics, from winning positions this season. And that's it. Brutal blunt force, true trauma. Everton shattered. Dyche trusts his bench like Tom Thibodeau trusts his. We didn't lose. That's progress. We're still in the relegation zone. One more game played than all around us. This draw, Davo, felt like both a loss and a win in equal measure.
It was a good result, Rog. This was a good result. I was just waiting for you to get to it. Make the case that when you're in a relegation battle, you have to get points on the road and you've got to win at home. And this is a point on the road against a relegation rival, a team, a few places above you. This was a decent point. This hurts much more for Forest than it does for Everton.
I think they get to lose the lead twice, to lose the lead twice was
but to
for
have
sure
the lead is remarkable, Rog. 2 goals scored away from home, a point on the road. I
love, and I need you to talk to us. The piece still on the couch sobbing. But I had a breakthrough realization myself this week, which I want to close with. I've come to see the trauma of this season. I just realised Everton, watching them is like as if you are watching one of the world's worst jam bands and you just have to go and see them in concert and just watch them noodle for hours on end on an extended improvisation of the only song that they know how to play, which is entitled Woeful, Uninspired, Miserable Mediocrity. And then I tried at the end, dear listeners, to do what I promised you that I would and just look at myself in the mirror and say, winning at life. We're winning at life. Doesn't work.
It was a good result, Rog. It was a good result. Before we go, a quick reminder about everything we've got happening at Men in Blazers this week. Our new podcast, Vamos, with Hurt Gomez, launches this Thursday right here on this very pod feed. Don't miss it. Also on this pod feed, what I'm told is a truly incredible episode with JJ Watt next Saturday.
Let's finish with a toast. I want to raise this shot of Jägermeister, this bolt of human emotion in a shot glass to the fans of Mainz in the Bundesliga, Jurgen Klopp's first club, who on Saturday unfolded an incredible giant tifo, I think it's on our Instagram, in which they commemorated the birthday of Eugene Solomon, 135th birthday. Eugene Solomon was one of the club's founders, its first president, a German Jew who was deported, murdered by the Nazis in Auschwitz in 1942. This club have named the street leading to the stadium Eugene Solomon Strasse. But the act of joyously remembering his birthday so publicly, so wondrously, so proudly ahead of a German football game, it is remarkable to witness in terms of football, in terms of national history, in terms of memory. I find it so deeply moving. May his memory never be forgotten. And Godspeed to the Nuffenfer.
Yes. Okay. You can follow us on Twitter at Men in Blazers, at MC Davies, at Rog Bennett, on Instagram at Men in Blazers, at MC Davies, on Facebook. We're the Men in Blazers on Twitch, twitch.tv/Men in Blazers. We're on YouTube. You can see a video version of our podcast, including this podcast, which we'll release in full. That is right from the opening to the close. Check it out on our YouTube right now. Also, our TikTok at Men in Blazers. You can always email us at meninblazers@gmail.com. Venderpunk, Rog.
War Pig.
Was that a Rabona?
I like snacks.
Balds win.
Take that, Gloria.
Balds lose.
To Tweed.
Abrigado, rock on, mate.
Kung Fu Fight America. Love you, Davo.
Love you, Roger.
Oh, enough fun for. Listen to the full version of this podcast and all our podcasts wherever you get your pods. But first, subscribe here for more Men in Blazers videos and courage.